Good morning. Welcome to the Willing Vessel podcast. I am Crystal, and I thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you all have great plans. Later on today, I'm going to be meeting my husband for lunch and then going grocery shopping, which is not my favorite task, but my kids like to eat, and actually so do I. So I will be going grocery shopping later on today. But today's episode is going to be a little bit different. Whenever I was thinking about doing the blog and podcast, of course, the words that God downloads to me was the main point. But I also wanted to add a few different things. And one of the things that I enjoy from other podcasters is recommendations. So I am always reading. I am an avid reader. I am always consuming content. I am often reading a book while I am listening to a book. Reading does take me longer, but I'm always listening to books while I am, in the car, or like today, whenever I go to the grocery store, I'll probably be listening to a book while I'm grocery shopping. And I also love podcasts as well as YouTube videos. So I love knowledge. Don't get me wrong. I also love Hallmark movies. Every once in a while, I will totally veg out in front of the TV. But I have found at the end of the day, I am happiest when I feel like I have accomplished something. So a few years ago, I was seeking the Lord sorry, my dog is coming in and her clack clack on the nails hopefully does not disturb you too much. But a few years ago, I was seeking the Lord on how to find time in my day to read my Bible and accomplish some of my goals while with reading. At this time, I worked nights and my kids were going to a charter school that was about 30 minutes away. They were at two different schools, and since it was a charter school, no one rode the bus. That meant that the car lines were very long, but really, aren't car lines always really long? Such is the life of moms. If you are able to put your kids safely on the bus, do it. And don't even for a minute feel bad about it or apologize. Take back your day. But back on subject. So I was seeking the Lord about a word for the year. This was at New Year's time. But about what I was going to have for a word and what goals I was going to set for the new year. And I really felt that the Lord gave me the word for the year as being intentional, that I needed to be intentional in how I spent my time, and that would in turn help me to accomplish the goals that I was setting for myself. It's so easy to sit down to watch one TV show and find that hours later you've watched 4 and you've kind of wasted time. Or at the time, I was spending hours in the car and I could be intentional and use that time to listen to my Bible, to listen to books, to pray and talk with God. So I became very intentional about my time. That does not mean I don't watch TV. Currently, right now, we watch one show. Right now, we're watching The Chosen. But we watch one show an evening as a family. And I still occasionally will veg out and watch a Hallmark movie or two. But I'm also always listening, like I'll have my AirPods on while I am out in the garden. I will, today while I'm grocery shopping, I will have my AirPods in and reading or listening to a book. I have books by my bed. I have books in my bag to read whenever I have a downtime. And I also love to listen to podcasts. And I often, whenever I am in the kitchen cooking, I will have a YouTube show on. I will put somebody on that's cooking, and it motivates me in the kitchen and makes me feel like someone's cooking with me. So I am often consuming content So I also am always looking for recommendations for content. And if you aren't sure how to get audiobooks, you can go through the Audible, which is a part of Amazon. There is a cost involved with that. You can have a membership, or you can buy the books, or you can buy books that are above your membership. And then there's also, you can have an app through your library. I have the Libby app. So I can also check out books through the library to help get content, because if you consume as much content as I do, that would get really pricey to have to buy all of those books. And also podcasts are free, and then YouTube channels as well. Since I'm always looking for recommendations, I thought that I might add book reviews to the podcast or blog. But one, how do I pick a book? That's actually, I have so many that I like and I love. So how am I going to do that? But then I also got to thinking, do I want to review or do I want to recommend? If I review, then you might think I put negative content, or I might talk about books that I don't like, that happens. I don't love every book that I read. But I never want this space to become an area of negativity. There is enough negativity in the world, and I do not need to add to it. So I decided that instead of a book review, I was going to do recommendations. So what do I recommend? I'm going to try to pick with whatever theme that the podcast has been in for that series. And if you haven't figured it out, our current theme has been just stepping out in faith into what God has called you to do. And yes, these messages have been just as much for me as my need to share. But I don't believe that will always be the case, I think. So here goes my first book recommendation. I decided to pick a book by Brene Brown, Daring Greatly. And before you start thinking, okay, Crystal, stop telling me to do things. This book is not what you think. It is not so much about doing as about being. Brene Brown is a shame and vulnerability researcher. And Daring Greatly is really about daring to be vulnerable, and something that a lot of us, myself included, have a hard time doing. So Brene is a fellow Texas girl, and if I have not told you yet, I am a Texas girl, born and bred. I love all the world that God has created and given to us, but Texas will always be my home. And as Texas girls, we are just a special breed of grit and grace. Brene does use mild language, so if you are offended by that, then this might not be the book for you, but you will miss out on a lot of her wisdom and her own open and honest vulnerability, which just brings the book to life and makes it so much more beautiful. And I've listened to her book, Daring to Lead, which that one's really good as well. But Daring Greatly is one that I've actually listened to twice. I love how open she is in her own vulnerability. And since I personally struggle with some of the areas of vulnerability that she does, it makes me feel comforted and less alone. Plus, she says I am not crazy. So thank you, Brene Brown. I'm going to tell my husband. I also love audiobooks that are read by the author, as is the case with Daring Greatly. I believe that this gives the book an authentic voice. It just comes across more sincerely when the author is the one who is doing the reading. So if you listen to books or you read, this one is a valuable way to spend your time. And are you intentional about how you are spending your time? Could being a little bit more intentional help you? Please let me know if this blog and podcast helps you, if you want me to recommend books and other things, if you find those valuable. And until next time, I pray that your time and your steps are blessed. Thank you so much.